I'm Carson Block, and this is Freddie Brick with Zer0es TV. Welcome to our inaugural podcast of Zero Fucks Given, a show about everything, anything, and probably mostly nothing. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our corporate sponsor, Smash and Grab Beer. Actually, it's produced by Legal Draft. Now, as you evaluate the probity of what I just said, understand that much of what we'll be saying on this show and in future shows is actually purely sarcastic. So if you're reading a transcript, you're probably gonna think this is a lot worse and more damning than it actually is. In any event, thank you for joining, and let's get started. What should we talk about?
You know, the thing about this show that really concerned me is that, it's supposed to be personality driven. We don't have a whole lot to talk about. But the first thing that really struck me about this is actually how tall I look sitting down on video. I was super concerned that it was, in fact, my torso that had always been kind of constrained. But it turns out I actually just have little legs. So that's been a huge relief. And I guess what I know was concerning you most of all is how close you have to sit next to me, because we're only about a year and a half out of COVID now. And this might be the first time you've been in a constrained environment, sat this close to my scent trails, which are just wafting into your face.
Well, yeah, look, a couple of things. You can also thank the 3 Yellow Pages phone books that you're sitting on. So there is still a use for these in America, number one. Number two, yeah. A millennial with like very little body fat, kind of like scares me in this environment because I'm not a millennial and I have slightly more body fat than you do. So I guess a little bit of a different risk tolerance vis-a-vis COVID. So don't fucking get me sick, man. Seriously.
So yeah, it's good to see you out and about. Look, this has been a strange week. Usually these kind of environments, I think one of the things I've really disliked about the environment where all stocks go down and it's macro driven is people think like we're doing really well and it's just awesome and we're like high-fiving in the office. And it doesn't matter how many times I tell people we're focused on alpha generation, they don't get it. So not only is it not like a high-fiving week, but actually no one seems to really care what short sellers do when the alternative is like global war, nuclear war, mass destruction, Vladimir Putin. So actually it's one of these like bizarre weeks where we, like everyone, just spend time watching the tape, kind of working on our own little stuff and not really focused on like a whole lot of like activist short selling.
Well, one of the misconceptions that I think people have is it's along those lines, but yeah, for short sellers, like it's always a bad time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like market goes up, it sucks. Market goes down, like, oh shit, we don't have enough risk on, like it's a bad time. Market sideways, there's not enough volatility. So I think there's partly this function of the glass is always half empty, and that's why we do what we do. When's the last time we fucking high-fived over anything? Like even pre-COVID?
France turning out to be way cooler than we thought.
Yeah, December 2019, France on the back end of 4.5 year, $1.6 million out of pocket investigation, exonerating us and deciding that they're not going to take any action after our reporting on Casino and Rally. The same week that they actually tagged, I think, Bloomberg News 5 million euro for re-reporting somebody else's falsified press release. So that was a big touchdown dance moment. That's true. And that was a few days after NMC, I think maybe even the same day we published on NMC.
Yeah, we should find out what that day is and celebrate it, like memorialize it.
It's our version of Bastille Day.
See, that was pretty much the last good day.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, yeah. So like on to current topics that are not so esoteric to us and 2 of the 6 people that are going to watch this. Look, obviously a ton going on in markets. And before this invasion even started, it was clear that we're entering into a new paradigm, right? So starting in March 2009, there's been this paradigm of massive monetary easing that's just propelled everything, straight up into the right. And, look, that's obviously with the central banks having to raise rates, and, communicating that, things starting in Q4 of last year got kind of choppy and got different. And it wasn't clear to me, well, I guess it's never clear to me, well in advance, but it was hard to say what the new paradigm is going to be. Is this going to be bad for shitcos, or how bad for shitcos, or is it temporary lull for shitcos? But then you layer on top the invasion and the reaction to the invasion. And, to me, I think this is more significant in terms of markets, or at least the way we look at markets, than a lot of people get, because the response of the world has been absolutely shocking, right? Like, what Putin and obviously China have been betting on is that we in the West are too corrupted, that we're too wrapped up in whether Nike can sell more sneakers, or Apple can sell more iPhones, or Steve Schwartzman can make more money from deals, to actually take a moral stand, when when the situation merits. And here, what we saw, I mean, with near unanimity in the West and almost instantaneously, is Western liberal democracies saying, this is the wrong thing. Fuck you. We're willing to experience some pain here. We're actually willing to take haircuts on, in business, for the sake of doing the right thing. And, look, it's really premature to assume that this lasts. I mean, since this was a complete shock, I think, certainly to me, that we would actually act with this much moral clarity and backbone. We do have to question whether it lasts. But if it does, I have to think that this changes the environment. This changes the policy environment, for one. But it, and ironically, I think this could change in terms of the investing environment. This could be bad for ESG, because ESG was like the perfect symptom of what I was talking about, right? Mm-hmm. Where ESG is the analog to what Putin and Xi thought was going to result from this invasion, which is, like empty statements and, bullshit sanctions that aren't really going to hurt anybody. That's ESG. But if we're in a world where we say, no, we actually care about substance, we care about the end result, and we're willing to take some pain, this could be really bad for existing, ESG plays. And, which I would argue, and I'd probably, Tarek Fancy also would argue, would be better for the fate of our planet long term.
So that's all very well and good. I'm not a macro genius, so I'm not going to disagree. The question I have is, what would Cathie Wood say? And that is not a hollow question, because actually, despite the amount of time you spend reading, you had one very, very important task in the past couple of weeks, and you failed. You were going to a conference where Cathie Wood was going to be present, and there were like one of two things I was really asking. Can you get a picture, ideally with one of our Shitcos branded hoodies? Or can you get her to sign something, which I latterly decided a Bible would have been the most appropriate prop? And you failed. But you did get to ask her what I thought was a pretty neat question.
Okay, so this is all true. I did go to this fantastic event last week. I didn't realize Cathie Wood would be there. So when I showed up for the dinner the first night, I was wearing the Arch Egos Thou Shalt Not Delever hoodie that we had made. And I did not. She was there Wednesday night during the day, Thursday, and Thursday night. I did not get a chance to get her one-on-one and get a picture with her. I was hoping to do that Friday. And when I looked, Wednesday and Thursday in the evening, she was, kind of surrounded by people, and probably wasn't the best time to go in there. But I did ask a question, but the content of this is off the record of this event, so I can't discuss the question or the answer. But in any case, I didn't savage her. I think when I was called upon, it sounded like a lot of people in the room were holding their breath. At least that's the feedback I got afterward. Feedback I got afterward also was, well, like, congratulations for being so restrained, like, for not being a complete embarrassment and asshole. So I guess that's kind of what the world thinks of, if not us, at least me at this stage in time. But look, I think it's cool that she was out there engaging, with this crowd. And yeah, I wanted the picture at the very least. To me, the real, like, 16 candles equivalent of, Molly Ringwald's panties would have been getting her to autograph a 1-year stock chart of ARK. But
that would have been awesome,
yes.
actually. Speaking of which, like, a bit of a shout out to Kiyobiku, who realized that ARK, I think, has the same, is it 5-month return as the ruble?
Yeah.
Now, granted, there's obviously some overfitting of that, but it is awesome. Like, I gotta say, I don't have a Twitter handle, but there are some people out there who are really, really good at finding these things. And I've often wondered, the people who are really bright, who have these great Twitter accounts, like, I mean, I don't have a Twitter account, and we, struggle to find enough time in the day to do what we're doing. Like, how do these people spend that much time putting up awesome numbers and then equally spending enough time finding these, like, cool, esoteric, funny things? I think it's a real talent.
Yeah, look, unquestionably. Well, okay, it is, I guess. It's my opinion. Kyubiku is the funniest fucker in all of FinTwit. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, I don't know what his numbers are, but it seems to be quite bright,
Yeah.
and really should be him up here. If he would drop the anonymity and come forth.
That's true. Okay, so this is our first public invite to KUBQ. If you do want to come on the show, and look, if, like you, both your mother and grandma are watching this, we could really add to our audience. So that'd be awesome.
Well, and we do have the technology to maintain the pseudonymity, right?
That's true.
So Freddy, a few years ago, developed this for one of our analysts who's from China, and when we were filming one of the videos, I think on Tao Education in the office, you brought in the paper shopping bag, right?
Which I obviously recycle.
Right. Yeah.
So doing my little bit for everyone there.
Yeah. I mean, but you could have used that vinyl, bag that you're, but
harder to breathe.
Well, you cut out holes, right?
I know from experience. Don't ask.
Okay, so anyway, we have the technology, KUBQ.
Right. So for anyone who does want to come on, that's both funny and wishes to remain anonymous, we got you covered. Other news this week that I think was interesting. I love that Shell had to give the $20 million of trading profit they made away to charity, which probably distracts from all the other profits they made this week. I think that's just so awesome. They made this big song and dance of we really had to buy this cargo, and we're so sorry for doing it, and no one's going to notice that we've got these bumper profits. And then in the meantime, I think Elizabeth Warren and a bunch of people in Europe are out there being we must tax windfall profits on all commodities. It's just so funny. They can't decide how they want it. Do they actually want to attract capital to any of these industries? Do they not want to attract capital? Do they want them to run off their businesses and turn them all into wind farms? It kind of depends each week, what it is they actually want any of these poor CEOs to do.
Well, I mean, look, this also speaks to a problem with politicians, including Elizabeth Warren. I mean, by most accounts, she should be pretty bright. She was a Harvard law professor, and notwithstanding the fact that they let Soren Andal graduate from Harvard Law,
that was I think that was positive discrimination for gingers.
That's true. I mean, Soren, Elizabeth Warren, I guess, got in because the whole Native American thing,
right.
And we should check to see whether Soren checked the minority ginger box.
I got to tell you, it's an underrepresented minority in finance, and Soren and I have discussed this, and he agrees.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, look, there's a reason why it's been a like recurring theme in South Park that gingers have no souls. Which I'm surprised. Like those of us in short selling like are not all gingers. So, but yeah, the so look, it's been clear for several years at least that Elizabeth Warren and other people in Congress, both sides, they'll make bombastic statements about what's going on in the markets and how various participants are wronging everybody, and they have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. I mean, my favorite example with Elizabeth Warren, just because I'm like you do too, like we know the guy, was when she savaged Whitney Tilson, who was it was a
Really
it was
unfair.
yeah like a fan. I think it was over charter schools. Like Whitney is a supporter of charter schools, and she called him hedge fund billionaire Whitney Tilson, and I don't know. I mean, like like nobody's gonna cry for Whitney, financially, but like he's the
Yeah.
brokest fucking billionaire I ever met. Like, I mean, that's so that was just so by that point in time, that made clear that she'll open her mouth and say shit for the sake of politics and what she thinks is
Yeah.
good politics. And look, I guess that's nothing new, but that also brings up something else, that I saw at the conference. And there was a candidate, a Republican candidate for federal office who spoke. And so this is again, it's off the record. It's a non-political event,
Mhm.
and we're like in this setting, be hoping for not the usual canned bullshit campaign lines and things like that. And look, later in the in this person's talk, I mean, he lamented how attention spans are so short, so you can't be honest and say what you think. But this was after, and let me back up for a second, right? Like I don't know if I told you about this, because look, you and I and like you know Krista down there and everybody in our firm, like who at least who understands what's going on, like are just lament the whole wokeness thing. Okay, like it's I think identity politics are highly corrosive to our society. So I never ever thought that I would defend wokeness until I saw this fucking guy speak. And
Mhm.
again, this isn't a campaign rally, and he's up there saying that he literally said that wokeness is a bigger danger to the US than Russia. And he talked about how we need to make America, so we need to make it so that middle class families can afford to support their children on one income. But he blamed, like literally blames pretty much every single societal ill we have on fucking wokeness. And it's just, I mean, it was so disappointing. Again, in this setting, like I get that's going to be, part of the 2022 Republican thing, but Jesus fucking Christ. Like this is a very smart person, I believe, highly accomplished
You really
professionally.
believe that?
I mean, going in, I thought so, right?
Okay.
Like, I mean, based on the
Do you still
person's
believe that? Come on.
I guess we have to say that there, to be fair, and this is something I've long believed, there are different ways of defining intelligence. Like
Hmm.
you can look at central bankers like Alan Greenspan, I mean Bernanke, Powell, Janet Yellen, and these are genuinely smart people. Like I mean, if you can measure processing power.
And it turns out some of them pretty awesome traders as well.
Well, not the chair people.
No,
It's like, yeah,
true,
it's
true.
like, well, they're like the portfolio managers, right? They delegate all the hard work to the analysts and the people running the
Right.
book.
Present company included.
Yeah. So I signed the checks, man. That's all that matters. So they're very smart people in terms of like processing power, but they can be so narrow-minded
Mhm.
and miss what to a lot of people has been the completely obvious. So we can say that there are different ways of of considering whether one's intelligent, but I mean in terms of somebody who's thoughtful, I mean just based on their CV, right? Like I
Mhm.
don't know him personally, but it's just so fucking disappointing, just so disappointing to see more of the same, because like to me the the moment you start accusing other Americans, you know, Brits, whatever, of being the enemy,
I
like
do
you,
have a green card. We're all good here.
for the moment,
just in case
for the
ICE
moment,
are listening.
yeah. But the moment you start accusing your political opponents of being the enemy and saying that they're worse than the actual enemy, I mean, fuck you, man. Like you've lost the page, entirely lost the page. So it's, you know, I really hope that now that we see what a real enemy is capable of, you know, Russia and the horrible things they're doing, like I really hope this brings us back to the 1980s, makes America fucking great again, when we knew who our fucking enemies were and we treated them as such.
You know, I wasn't around in America in the 1980s
Or
or the
anywhere.
early part anywhere, but yeah, it makes me think. Actually, I'm along that theme. I'm actually in the running to try and get my own ICBM this week. I met someone recently. His mother grew up on a farm, so his dad ended up buying a horse farm, and it just came up in conversation that he has a missile silo. And I was like, did you ever like go down there as a kid? And he's like, well, like you got to be careful with these things because they fill up with water and people get electrocuted. So, and we don't know the actual size of the missile, but my new project is to get my own ICBM because, look, we're sitting here in Austin, and a lot of people have guns, and a lot of people have a lot of guns, and I don't have a gun. And look, not only am I feeling left out, although I have gone and told my neighbors, like, look, if anything goes down, I'm going to call you. We'll be asleep in the high vis vests, so please don't shoot us. But I know you are itching to use your guns, so like come in and knock yourself out. But I kind of think it sends a message to anyone, like, you know, we'll just put a little sign in the window, like ICBM in the back, and they know we're not to be fucked with. So
All right.
that's been my project of the week.
Well, two thoughts here. So number one, you know, again, we're in Texas. I mean, maybe not so much in Austin, but if you go trick or treating next Halloween, somebody will probably throw a gun in your sack. You know, it's
Or
like
at
a,
least
you
some
know,
ammo.
Halloween thing.
At least some ammo. I
Yeah,
would have thought.
at least some.
Hollow points.
Well, I mean, yeah, but there's more to it than that. Like, you know,
Okay.
as a millimeter caliber, like, you know, you
Yeah,
probably,
no idea about guns.
I don't know, so you probably need the gun. So they need the gun, give you the gun and the ammo. So like, you could probably get that while trick or treating, at least in, you know, 75% of Texas. But the second thought that I had is, you know, I'm not sure whether that you acquiring an ICBM and certainly posing with it would be a good sign or a bad sign, because you know, if there are some insane and jealous failed former short sellers who, you know, kind of ride around on, like, you know, Revolutionary War cannons, you know, threatening to blow their nut sacks off. And so I don't know if you having an ICBM is just like a more, you know, insane and jealous failure, you know, failed version of that, or if it's like, this is how you actually stay in business and be successful. So I don't know what to make of that, like directionally.
You know, it's a good question. And then, look, obviously up here, I look I'm about 6'2.5". It's a scale thing.
It's a fucking yellow pages, dude.
It's a scale thing. And, you know, because someone actually said to me, like, oh, you're moving to Austin, like, what are you going to drive? I'm like, well, I don't have a license. I'm thinking of getting a horse. And then it occurred to me, I'm going to look pretty small on a big horse. However,
get a miniature pony.
Right, you get yourself a pony, you sit up, you kind of like set it back. Everyone's going to be like, oh, Freddy's really working out there. And little do they know, it's a miniature pony.
Right. Well, that's like what they, you know, like Hollywood trick. I learned this when I went on those Universal Studios tours as a kid, where they would often in the Westerns, like, make men walk through these shorter door frames and women walk through these taller door frames. You know, and that's one of the reasons why nobody is, you know, like, laughed about Tom Cruise kicking somebody's ass in a movie, because they're so good at, like, you know, making you think that he's not abnormally short or anything like that.
Wait, what's abnormally short? Can we cross that off?
Well, my wife's 4'11", so I'm going to say below 4'11".
Is Tom Cruise below 4'11"?
If I want to believe he is, sure.
If we got that on the right QAnon forum, I think that could be a thing. Is Tom Cruise 4'11"? Speaking of which, there's a guy I really would like to speak to, the Our Birds Real guy. I think that's awesome. I kind of got clued onto that a couple weeks ago. I think that's an awesome device. You know more about it than me. I think you heard some of the podcasts, but my understanding is he was like an undergrad who like maybe turned up at a QAnon event or something, and just kind of off the top of his head was like, someone was like talking about frazzle drip or whatever, and he was like, yeah. I don't know if you know this thing, like, birds aren't real, and just kind of riffed it from there, which I think is really awesome. And they had him on like Howard Stern the other week, and I think like there's a real movement out there that people think birds are not real.
Right, and well, they're the people who are in on it, and then the people who are not in on it, who
right.
are
The voters mostly.
Yeah, Brits too. Like you guys are not. You sound smarter, but in reality, you're not.
This is true. This is true.
I mean, it's like, I'm glad you're married because you're not out there like weaponizing that British accent against American women, and like that's just fucking with American men who just can't do a good British accent to impress with faux IQ points.
Especially Southerners. Should I have said that in a state where everyone else is carrying a gun? No offense.
No, you shouldn't have. But like this is as close as I'm going to get to you for a little while as a result of that. But speaking of, I often do think of QAnon in what we do because I'm out there, on Twitter and and it's amazing since retail has really gotten into the markets in 2020. Well, it's amazing, especially since they've started to lose their asses and stupid shit like AMC, which we have no position in AMC. We've never had any position in AMC yet. Constantly getting tagged by like the FinTwit versions of the QAnon fucking shaman, as they like lament what's going on with AMC and talk about how like Muddy Waters and others are colluding with short ladders and like it's just absolutely fucking crazy. And I mean, look, it's not the only corner of life, of course, where this is happening, and it's politics, and frazzle drip illustrates that. But it's like there's this, maybe you don't know, okay? You're sitting out there, you don't know what a short seller does, you don't know that, like I don't think there are any ladders in the office and shit like that, except for the one that you need to sit on. And which is, to be fair, not a tall ladder, not that short. So maybe you have questions about how stuff works. But this idea, it's almost like a wholesale rejection of Occam's razor, right? Where, Occam's razor, in the absence of an explanation, the simpler, in the absence of knowledge, and you've got competing explanations, the simplest answer is the best. And it's like, okay, simple answer is people who were long the stock are selling it. The more complex answer that people seem to like, I can't even describe, and I don't even understand. And like, I don't even, like some of these words aren't even in my vocabulary. And it's just, I think it really is just a symptom of the time, or sign of the times, that people in the financial markets will seize onto these completely incoherent narratives. Like, I don't even know that you can call it a narrative when it's, runs in circles and contradicts itself internally, but that they'll seize upon that rather than, no, man, like everybody's been saying, like everybody on the short side's been saying that this thing is fucked. The company's issued stock. Insiders have been dumping into your dumb hands. Maybe it's just that it's a piece of shit and it's finally coming back to earth. And it's not like this grand conspiracy to thwart the MOAS with like the mother of, ICBMs, and like against a fucking, Revolutionary War nut shooting cannon.
On the whole theme of cinema, I mean, look, I go every few years to watch James Bond because, like, deep in the recesses of my mind, I feel like it's autobiographical, which it's not, sadly.
You are going to get that old Aston Martin, right?
This is true.
Yeah,
this is
true.
You're
yeah. It's
I
not
actually asked my wife.
It's aspirational. It's not autobiographical.
I actually asked my wife. We were driving in an Aston Martin the other week. I was like, "Does this make you feel like a Bond girl?" She's like, "Nah."
So let me ask you: were you? I think there are some activist short sellers out there who like go and just like test drive a car that they actually probably can't afford, and then they take pictures of it and tweet about it? Like, was that you? Were you just taking it for a test drive?
Was not for a test drive. No pictures exist. I wasn't outside the dealership. Um, no comment. Yeah, the cinema, it's funny. Yeah, it's someone we work with a little bit actually just messaged me last night, just being like, yeah, I was watching the Batman film, the new one. It's 3 hours. I recommend you wait for it to come out on DVD so you can
Wait.
pause it.
Oh.
I'm just like, it's really occurred to me that, like, at least my generation, we just have like the shortest attention spans. Like, even watching a 3-hour movie now is just too much for us.
Well, I mean, to me, I interpret that as it actually sucks, and like, and you pause it to resume it just because you don't want to feel that you wasted that hour and 45 minutes of your life by not at least getting to the end, which will hopefully offer some redemption.
Well, if you're a much, much, much older gentleman and you have a weak bladder, I guess that's a legitimate thing. But yeah. Speaking of which, it does remind me of like when we once were in Thailand. Like, it was a really cool experience.
Wait.
We're gonna keep it. We're gonna keep it.
No, we're talking about the 52-year-old guy who, in great health, who like keeled over from.
Okay,
not
so
drugs.
You know what? Two things. I was going to talk about how we went to the cinema and they actually have a whole thing for the king. Like, they play the national anthem.
You saw that really shit
cool.
too?
Yes.
It's not cool. I mean, but it was like, this is how they brainwash everybody.
Very cool.
Okay.
But we should talk about Shane Warne, okay? One of the greatest Australian cricketing legends. Again, a game you don't care for, much the way I feel about baseball. However, this is a man.
Over in 3 hours. Like, talk about being able to hit a fucking pause button. Like, I mean, these games you were telling me going on like 5 days. I mean, come on. Like,
the nuance is lost on you. However, this is a man who was known as quite the womanizer, who once dated like Liz Hurley, who had somewhere between 2 and 4 masseuses at the villa hours before he unceremoniously passed, and they're blaming the fucking water diet that he did for like 2 weeks. I mean, that's as bad as like this Peloton thing where, Mr. Big dies on Sex and the City and they're like, Peloton, start crashing. I mean, Daily Mail or whoever it was that reported that, you know what you were saying.
Well, gee, Freddie, I always assumed that cricketers needed to be in tip-top shape to play that shit. I'm shocked if you're inferring that this...
You know what? They are more athletic than Booney. So I don't know if you know about Booney. Booney was a guy who on I think it was Australia to maybe the UK flight, which I want to say is like 22 hours, down 52 cans of beer, and then did a press conference and had a couple drinks after. I think he holds the record on a transatlantic flight.
Okay, so like I got a one up, right? My generation. I mean, he's older than I am, but my generation was alive when this happened. Guy who used to be he was a very senior guy at Trust Company of the West, TCW. I think he ran their EM book. So back in the early '90s. He was pulling down like probably well into 7 figs, which, it's like, real money. So this dude was returning from Buenos Aires to the US on a flight. And he was so drunk that he ended up getting arrested when the plane landed because he wasn't allowed to use the bathroom because like the president of Argentina was on the plane and his bodyguards wouldn't let him use this one bathroom. And so they'd stopped serving him alcohol and he became belligerent. He went into the galley, took a shit on the galley cart, per the article, like wiped himself with the linen napkins and then proceeded to traipse feces throughout the cabin. Now, I would never have remembered the name Gerard Finneran, for any, other than this. And like, it's been a long time. I mean, shit, man, it's been probably about 30 years. This could, almost be the 30th anniversary. So I don't want him to be overshadowed by that guy you're talking about because,
Okay.
for financial professionals, I think Gerard Finneran is he's the standard bearer for bad drunken conduct on a plane.
I gotta ask, do you think he ranks higher than His Highness Sage Kelly?
Oh, well, I don't know about Sage on a plane. That's Sage.
Dude, that's a great name for a film. Sage on a plane instead of Snakes on a Plane. Anyone out there watching who's in the movie funding business, we're serious about funding Sage on a plane.
And it wouldn't be inept if the subtitle were Snakes on a Plane as well when Sage is on a plane. Look it up. It's also just legendary. Well, look, man, I think that covers all of the market moving news that we have. So yeah, congratulations
Cool.
on finishing the first
and
Zero Fucks Given podcast. And,
Zero Fucks Given, and
smash and grab.
Smash and grab.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.